Hi, Barb from A Life in Balance. This week's vlogmom topic comes from Julie of Julieverse, and she asks, what are tips you would offer a couple that's about to tie the knot? I've been married for about 20 years. It'll be 20 years this October 9th, and my husband and I have been through a lot together, starting with the wedding, actually. That was a pretty interesting time, and I'm hoping that our anniversary party isn't quite the same. But that's really up to us, and we were young and we didn't really know much then. So actually, that's my first tip. Stick to your guns when you're putting together your wedding and your reception and your honeymoon, and don't get pulled into any kind of family squabbling or any kind of family issues going on. Keep the lines separate and make it clear that people need to focus on your special day and acknowledge that this is your day and it's going to be what you want it to be. My second tip is during your marriage, make time for yourselves as a couple. It's incredibly important, and that's one of the mistakes that my husband and I made initially. We were married for 3 years before we had our first child, and then it was another 7 years before we had 4 in a row. And that was a really tough time, and I wish we had taken the time initially to really invest in ourselves as a couple and make date time a priority. And we did stuff together. I mean, we loved canning and gardening, so we had hobbies that we were doing together, and we still do together. And we did go out to dinner a little bit, but it was usually as a threesome. My husband and his best friend and I would go out to dinner, but we hardly ever went out to dinner as a couple. We didn't go to the movies. And even though we didn't have a lot of money, there were ways that we could have spent date time together, but it just wasn't a priority. We didn't realize how important it was to invest that time in our marriage. Now we do it. Now we make a commitment to doing it, and we try and go out once a month, and it's been fabulous. But if you have 5 kids, just having time without an uninterrupted conversation is fabulous. My next tip is be prepared to compromise. I mean, yes, there's your way, there's his way, but you got to find somewhere in the middle, or acknowledge that sometimes you need to compromise or he needs to compromise depending on how important the issue is and other factors around it. Like if you had an issue where there was safety involved and it was about doing something safely, obviously you want it to be as safe as possible, and that's, it's not something you're going to compromise on. But, work it out if there's other times where it's choosing between 2 restaurants and say, okay, let's go to the one you want this time, and then next time we'll go to the restaurant that I want. Or if you want to try dancing and he doesn't, say, okay, what can we do together that you want to do in return for, going dancing the way that I want to do? So make it a win-win situation when you're compromising. Don't think of it as losing out, because you want your partner to know that his needs are just as important as your needs, and that you're listening and you're acknowledging them. And maybe this is not the time that they're going to be met, but there is going to be a time when they're going to be met. My last tip is be your spouse's cheerleader. If you look on the wall behind me, you can see all these race numbers. My husband has been coming to almost all of my races that I've been doing for the past almost 2 years, and he went to a couple of races that I did much earlier when I was running before kids, and he's always been there. He's always been cheering me on, and I love it. And he'll bring the kids when he can. In fact, they came to my last race before I had to take a running break, and I just think that's really important, to be a cheerleader for your spouse and to celebrate their moments, and to actually be present. And, when it's their time for the spotlight, be present and don't try and hog the spotlight. So those are my tips for a couple about to tie the knot.